Hey, boys and girls, I'm happy to and super excited to tell you that we're going to be bringing some long-form interviews, and we're here today with my dear friend and colleague, Mandisa Moore-O'Neal, or O'Neal Moore. Did I get it right the first time?
Moore-O'Neal.
Moore-O'Neal, and her wife, Wendi Moore. Did I have it right?
Moore.
O'Neal. I tell you, see, this is probably why I'm never married, right? Because I can't even get the names right. So, first of all, tell me why or how you two met. How you met?
Well, we met in I like to say we met at a French Quarter hotel.
Hotel Street on a hotel room at a hotel on Bourbon.
Well, you said hotel room.
On Bourbon, right? So that's objectively true. I think the part that is missed if you say that is that it was at a conference in the daytime. So, and the hotel was on Bourbon, so that had an entrance on Bourbon, so that's why we say that. But I was in a fellowship program for folks who were involved in organism after Katrina, and I was in the 07 class, and Wendi was in the 08 class. And it's like the fellowship often had a lot of like meeting involved, like maybe 3 times a year.
What was the name of the fellowship?
New Voices Fellowship. It was funded through Ford and some other, but like Ford was like the main one. And so it was the first meeting of the 07 class and the 08 class. And it was at some of the hotels on Bourbon, so I don't remember.
So all of that is not interesting at all.
She said long form.
No, it was, so we're in this fellowship program. We were, I had run my mouth so long that the session had changed over. So, I was eating lunch while this panel discussion was setting up. So I looked over and I realized that somebody was sitting there while I was about to eat. So I looked up to ask if she wanted some of my food. And I saw you and I was struck. I was just
mesmerized.
Absolutely. You were the most radiantly beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And so I was literally embarrassing myself staring at you. And I to the point that I had to introduce myself. I couldn't figure out anything else to say but the truth. And so I introduced myself and I explained, I apologized for staring at you because you were just the most radiantly beautiful woman I'd ever seen.
Love it first sight.
He says it wasn't a pickup line.
It wasn't.
So 2008, you two meet at a fellowship meeting. You say, hey, you are the most radiantly beautiful woman I've ever seen. Now, what do you say?
15 years later, I have a lot more tools for articulating how I feel. So I didn't have those tools in 2008. So 16 years later, it's 2024. So at the time, I was like, I know how to process being sort of like overwhelmed that this person was like staring at me like the entire panel discussion. I know how to process that was kind of overwhelming, a little anxiety producing, and also like turned on by it. So because I had this like mix of emotions, I know how to process. I was just like, thank you, and left. Like that was like the only response. Like,
left.
She totally walked away.
I
She was like, this is a little creepy.
I didn't say that. But
I remember exactly what you were wearing. You were wearing a white T-shirt, a single gold eleke or shuneleke. Mm-hmm. You were wearing a blue, like peasant skirt and flip-flops.
Yep.
And
what was she wearing? What was Wendi wearing?
I don't remember the actual colors. I remember it being a dress, though.
I don't remember what I was wearing.
No, like it was like a top and then pants. So like sitting down, I thought it was a dress. Mm-hmm. But then standing up.
And I would have worn dresses.
Yeah, you totally would have worn dresses. When we first met. But then 2 days later, all the fellows went out on Frenchman, which is very different then than it was now. I wouldn't really go to Frenchman today.
What was Frenchman like 15 years ago?
It was much more local, lots more live music. It wasn't as touristy. I think it had a better vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was I'm from here, but I had moved away, and that was my first time back since the storm. And so I was actually out with my friend, and we had always hung out on Frenchmen throughout our childhood. And so she was taking me back to our regular stomping grounds. And I had mentioned that I had met this amazingly beautiful woman. And she saw you standing over.
On Frenchman Street?
We were in a place called Cafe Brazil. And so we were in this cafe. And Mandisa was standing in the middle of the room. I didn't see her. My friend's name is Silu. And Silu says, "Wendi, look at this woman." And I said, "That's her. That's her."
Serendipity. She shows up again.
And I was so amazed that you gave me the time of day. I was just...
Did you talk this time?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked for like
We stood there, talking in the middle of the cafe. And people were moving around. Silu, I didn't even remember Silu was still there. And
I think.
Wow. So you have these 3 like random meetings where you two are in spaces that are not necessarily overlapping, but they are overlapping. Like you two should not necessarily be in those 3 spaces at the exact same time, but you do. Do you look at that and say, this must mean something, or do you
Every fucking day.
yeah.
Yeah, like it is definitely a sign. And those are some of the things that, like made me interested. Was like, well, out of all the tables in the world, the first day of the fellowship, because I was late, of course. I sat at your table. Then it just so happened on Frenchman, I happened to like come out there at the exact time and go to Brazil. Then the friend who I was meeting up with happened to be family, friends, like with your, you know what I mean? It was just all these, yeah.
And so we're on when we went to dinner that night with my dad, the way that it was a really tiny restaurant, and the way it was, our thighs were touching kind of like this.
It's at the same time.
Yeah. And I was vibrating. I couldn't hold it together. I was just, and here I was out to dinner with my dad and his dear friend. So I had to hold it. I had to act like I had home training. And I was really not holding it together. I still have that same feeling, like with our thighs touching now. But and so it was just overwhelming, and I was really embarrassed to be having these feelings where I couldn't even keep it off my face with my dad and his friend.
When you two meet, are either of you seeing anybody else? When you two meet, is there anybody else in your life?
Oh yeah, at the time that I first met Wendi, I was dating someone like in an open relationship.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Wendi? Were you seeing someone?
Oh no, nor was I. I was interested in dating maybe, but I wasn't interested in. See, I was heartbroken, and I never wanted to be in a relationship ever again.
Now, so that's where you kind of come together in, it's not even romantic yet. It's more intimate. It's more depth to it than that. But what are you doing in your professional lives at this point? You're at a fellowship because you are working in what?
So after Katrina, I was a part of a group of mainly Black feminists who opened up a women's health clinic. None of us were doctors, but all of us knew what it was like to have shitty health care, and so wanted to provide a clinic that was centered around the values of Black feminism in a context where the healthcare industry had been gutted in many ways. And the focus on community clinics also wasn't that high. And so we organized and fundraised and met with people to be a medical doctor, our medical director, and opened up a women's health clinic 2 years after the storm. So I was involved in a lot of reproductive justice organizing post-Katrina. So I'm looking at the connections of housing to anti-violence initiatives, to like ability to have contraception and sexual health education. So like essentially this fellowship was a chance to have a salaried person like to build the capacity of not so much like the clinic, but like the organizing side of the clinics, like the advocacy work that we were doing.
Now, are you a lawyer at this point?
Oh, absolutely not. This was pre-law school. So this was, I was 23.
Okay.
So I didn't go to law school until so the fellowship started in 2007, and I went to law school in 2010.
Okay.
So I did intentionally, I did a lot of time between undergraduate and law school.
Okay. And how about you, Wendi? What are you doing work-wise at this time, career-wise?
I was working with I moved back home to work with a group called the Families and Friends of Louisiana's Incarcerated Children. And they were organizing parents of young people who were incarcerated. And they were shutting down prisons. And I just I thought that was the most fire thing ever.
They sure were.
And I just wanted to be a part of something that seemed so transformative. And then do that at home. And so I was doing cultural work and training and education with Flick.
So you two come together and both are also kind of these advocates, activists, sorts of folks, and kind of come together with this emotional fire, right? So
I mean, I think that's the time. I don't know in June 2008 if that's where we were.
It wasn't emotional for me. It was physical. It was
That's
purely physical.
That's what I'm saying. I think that came later.
So it was the loins and then the lessons.
Well, yeah. I mean, for me,
Is the way I put it?
so I think why we are laughing is because it's I wouldn't say it's a running joke, but I was not having the same experience that Wendi was having.
No, I was having that experience.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that I wasn't experiencing the vibration.
Right.
But I want to be clear, it doesn't mean that I wasn't having a experience.
Right.
I was very attracted. I was very turned on. Most of that, I was very intrigued.
Right. So, well, wait a minute. Let me stop. Let me ask you a different question. Let me rephrase my. So, at that point in time, are you like a Romeo player type? I mean, is what I'm thinking. Because I'm trying to pick up what you're putting down. I'm trying to pick up what you're putting down.
I think in my mind, I thought I was.
In your mind, or I mean, okay, it's kind of like I feel like like when you go out on a date, you have to say, so who else thinks they're dating you? Because people say, oh, I'm single, but how many people think that they're going out with?
So I had all these things in theory, so in my mind, by being open, and being clear that I'm dating other people, I was trying to be upfront about where I was. So now at that time I was dating one of the person who was my girlfriend at the time. Ironically, we ended not long after I met Wendi, though that is a sign too. It had nothing to do with you. It was really on the way out, but
picking up what you're putting down. Got you.
Mm-hmm. But I was a party girl. I was a bartender as well, so
really?
And a bouncer.
Really?
At Tipitina's.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
I bartended most of undergraduate.
Yeah.
Most of the time between undergraduate and law school, and about half of law school.
Well, wait a minute. Stop all of that. Forget that bartender. Tell me about being a bouncer. What?
Oh, I loved it. I think it was a way to work for a lot of aggression that I may not have always known that I had.
So tell me one story about being a bouncer.
Well, I'm familiar with Tipitina's. It's like a historic live music joint in New Orleans.
Okay.
So we would have tickets.
The Neville Brothers.
The Neville Brothers
famously came out of there.
Professor Longhair was named after.
Mm-hmm.
So it's typical to have like shows every night. You know, you gotta have tickets.
Yeah.
You either have to will call them, I see you, or like buying that night. And so like one thing would happen, like people would get super offended at the ID thing. You know, oh, I can't believe you asked for my ID. And it's like, can you just show it and it'll be fine? So people would have an attitude. Then you'd have to kind of be like, hey, like, I have to see your ID. You can't come in. Most people were fine. And then it was the people who, you know, it's a bar. So people, you know, would get drunk. And again, most people when they're drunk, you know, maybe a little, dance a little weird, but aren't like aggressive. But all it takes is like one person that night, like whatever. So some people had to be like thrown out. At times, like the bartenders like would come to us and be like, that motherfucker, he tried not to pay for drinks. We'd have to like kick them out.
And you know, people notoriously come to New Orleans to be
like
well
people are
behaved.
very disrespectful to us. You know.
So now wait a minute. So are you hemming folks up and throwing them out of it?
Yeah.
Babe, you have to. Remember when we were at One Eye Jack?
Well, I was not bartending. Okay, so this is after. Let's fast. Okay, I'll get to the story. I'll give it to Bettina's story, and that was another story. Well, it was a time. It was a sold out show, which is probably why this happened. It was like some big act. It was sold out, and this guy did will call, and he had like 8 tickets, and tried to get like 12 people in. And someone told me, like, it'd always be like 4 of us on the door. And he intentionally came in my line because often it was like 4 of us girls who worked there. And we were the hardest because I think folks would try us more as women. I noticed his line was shorter, but he was in our line, which like I peeped those kind of things. And so did everyone else. I'm like, okay, like let's keep our eye as to why like this group is going in the longer line. Most people do the opposite. You trying to get in, get your little drink, get your spot before the show. Shig Avery, okay, she's going to her spot. Perfect. But he came in, sure enough, I have 8 tickets. I said, okay, well, who are your 8? He doesn't listen. I said no, so I have to like put myself in the front. And then he keeps trying to go, so I have to like pull him and be like, who are your 8 people? Right here, I said, I need you to count out 8 people. And unfortunately, the rest are sold out. So unbeknownst to me, like my coworkers, we were also friends, but coworkers like see and have already like blocked the door, but I don't know because they're behind me. So they had my back. And so I had to like push him out and be like, hey, this isn't okay. So after a while, the 8 people came in. Oh, I'm sorry. But then the 4 kept trying to get in, like the side doors, then would like be upset and want to curse. And it was just a whole thing. But most of the time it was just check people's IDs. And when it's time to check, like after the music's over, okay, y'all, it's time to go, close out, that kind of stuff. But every once in a while, you know, now I will say as far as like fights, it wasn't that many I had to break up. Mostly it's like people you had to like throw out or whatever.
You know, I gotta tell you, of all the things I thought you would tell me today, this is not one. I'm simply fascinated by this. And I'm fascinated by this because of what you or who you project today. Now, I can't imagine you in a bar or somewhere stopping the people from coming in. I just, but then, see what you just did a thing, and I don't know if the camera picked up the thing. It was the shoulder shrug that you just did with the, you know, you got to do what you got to do. That was the tell right there.
That was the assignment.
Right. So, okay. So now you are in a space and a place where you've met Wendi, but, you know, you're the international playgirl. I'll give you that time.
I said party girl.
I said, okay, I said what I said. And I said what I said. And so, you know, what gets you to, do you stay in this, I'm a poly, do you define your other relationship as poly, or you just define it as open?
The language of poly, I always said open. Mm-hmm. The truth of the matter is, I never really did it very well. Mm-hmm. You know, every once in a while, I would go on dates, but I can't really say there was ever a long period of time of me dating other people.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that like that's what it meant to be radical and to be queer, is to be open. And it wasn't ever something that I had figured out too much. Like in hindsight, I wish I had taken more time to like understand what I wanted as opposed to what I thought I was supposed to do. I'm just glad that in a time where I thought I was supposed to do it, I didn't get too hurt and like have horrible stories in the time where I didn't quite know. I also think that, thank you, babe. I also think that I was raised evangelical. And at about 17, I was very clear this is not for me. And at 18, I was finally able to leave via high school and going to college. So I think 18 to 21, especially like those 3 years, like it was a time of like figuring out an identity outside of this church, like that I didn't have the language I have now. I just knew it was oppressive. I didn't want to be a part of it. Now I can write a thesis as to how it was problematic. Like birth through 5, one thesis. 5 through 10, another thesis.
So tell me about you coming out.
I don't feel like there's ever like one moment. I feel like I came out over a period of years.
Well,
like if you ask my parents, based on like how Christians, especially like evangelical Christians, are like constantly in the state of denial about what really is, I think they would say 25, because that's when I brought Wendi home. So for them, it wasn't real until there's someone in their face who I would like them to meet, right? So for them, that's when I came in, even though I know I had been saying it, before, though, I can also say I now have more tools to be clear. So I can also see how, for them, I came out at 20, but I could see them being like, you said you liked the girls. We didn't understand that, man. I was like, well, what else would it mean? You asked me if I had a boyfriend. No, you asked if I was dating, and I was like, well, yes, women. So whatever. But like, so it happened over time is what I'm saying. Like, I can't say of that one moment where I was like, I'm out.
Right. But okay, so but walk me through how you do it, right? So do you, like I came home drunk one night and told my dad. I had told my mom when I was 12. There's a story there, right? My 6th grade teacher had told my mom when I was in 5th, 6th grade, this isn't a phase. You get your mind right. So it wasn't kind of this big blow.
So
thank God for 6th grade teachers.
Miss Moore, she's great. Still talk to her.
Kidding. It's funny because I was on a call and the check-in question was about a song from your childhood. And the song I picked was Summertime by Will Smith and Jazzy Jeff. Because I was like, I wanted to be the girls who the guys were looking at. And I also wanted to be the person looking at the girls. Because I was like, I too want to look at girls. In hindsight, those are like such these queer moments. I think like the biggest moment is when I was in 5th grade. And this 6th grader, I remember her first name, Bianca. I don't remember her last name. Dark skin, gorgeous. And it took me a while to realize we didn't all have a crush on Bianca.
You bet everybody did.
And then, literally, I'm like, and I remember having this moment. It was like, so we don't all have this thought. Like, how are we?
Kind of like Wendi after the meet.
Yeah, not all.
Right. But no. So when do you go to someone? When do you go to your parents, or when do you go to a friend and you say, I think it's women that is going to be my jam?
I went to books. Because that's always what I did. Okay. I went to books. Like I was an avid reader. Like I was the kid who would hyperventilate in a library because I'd never seen like a space, but like books were always my thing. So library was like, oh my God, it's so many. Where do I start? Do I go right? Do I go left? Do I go in front of me? I look behind me. What is this?
Right.
So I actually, funny story from my mom, Black woman, upwardly mobile, middle class, married to a doctor. She read essays. and ebony and wore fashion and all of that. And so one day she was like, oh, I'm going to stop reading Essence, all these stories about lesbians. It's distasteful. So when I got older...
Where were all the stories about lesbians?
Literally.
In Essence.
So when I got older, I was like, well, let me get
The Essence subscription. Right?
And the disappointment. But there was not one story
For lesbians, right? What story did you ever ask your mother what she read?
We should ask her now.
I'm going to ask her now that she'll give me an answer. It was one story in which someone shares how older she came out. How that became all these stories about lesbians. But again, as a 16, 17, I was like, yes, this is what I'm like, it's safe. I can go to the library. No one's going to be like, oh, scandalous. The disappointment when
So you went to the library and got some Essence magazines.
Yes, I wanted to learn about lesbians. I mean, and granted, it was great articles.
Right.
Well, not the best, but they weren't bad.
Hey, easy Essence.
Essence, no, they used to be good.
So we are different ages, and by the time I was of age, they had depoliticized all else.
I understand.
But anyway, it was none of them were about lesbians or even bisexual. No one was about any kind of queer spectrum.
So there wasn't any like back page. Maybe they should start the Essence back page. But so my question for you is, are feminism and lesbianism and queerism, are they synonymous?
They're not synonymous, and we can't act like once you understand that patriarchy is a problem, it's also like not going to influence who you fuck. You know what I mean? So I don't think that like all feminists or lesbians, all lesbians are definitely not feminists because I've dated clearly. I'm married to a feminist, and that is a huge part of how I knew that I wanted to have a long-term, black feminist. It's because I knew. So I don't think it is synonymous, but I don't think it's a bad thing to talk about like the overlap. Once I have a critique, like to me, a black feminist is someone who believes that black women are inherently valuable. If I have a belief that black women are inherently valuable, it could, it's not a requirement, it could spill over into my romantic interests. You know what I mean? It could, like a spill over into what I find attractive because I've already decided like that black women are inherently valuable. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was a connection. I also think that, and we talk about this all the time, I also think that there's space to talk about black lesbian as a political identity and not just a sexuality. So I think that there's a way that like lesbian occupies a certain politic. And I think that's what's been so dangerous about like the closing of lesbian bars nationwide is you're losing a gathering space and a political home for people. Like you're losing this space like where folks came to, yes, drink and hook up. Yes, that happened. And where folks had to organize, make meetings, talk about next steps for actions. And with that being gone, it's less space for us to do that. Because like it has always been a political space as well.
So, Wendi, tell me about you. How did you come out? What's your coming out story?
They're different. I just can't really keep my mouth shut. And so, everybody I ever thought I was coming out to, they told me they already knew. So, I mean, when I went to school, I went to Spelman in Atlanta, and I fell in love with my roommate, but she was a white woman.
At Spelman?
Right.
I know, it was just...
A white woman at Spelman?
What can I say? I mean, yes, there were, my freshman year, there were 3 white women on campus, and I was so embarrassed.
Embarrassed that you'd fallen in love, or embarrassed that this was your roommate?
Yeah. No, the thing is, I got to Spelman, I had no idea that there were Black people who weren't like me.
What do you mean?
I grew up
What do you mean?
in a very politically radical household, and I had no idea that there were Black people who weren't in support of Black people and the liberation of Black people. And when I got to Spelman, I met Black folk who were politically conservative. Found myself kind of isolated, and I learned that I was poor for the first time. And I didn't know.
Spelman will teach you that.
Yes, indeed. Yes, she did. And so I really didn't feel, I was kind of a fish out of water in this very conservative environment. And I was also raised understanding myself to be atheist. And Spelman was a very evangelical environment.
Well, I mean,
So I'm saying,
yeah, I want to back up a couple of steps, right? So it's kind of like when I moved to San Francisco, right? I really said that I thought that I wanted to be able to just kind of be out. I mean, even though I had been out a long time, and I thought that San Francisco would get me in touch with my gayness in a different way. But actually, San Francisco got me in touch with my blackness in a different way. All right, because I mean, and I tell people because it wasn't, and they were like, well, was it super racist? I was like, it's different. It's an invisibility.
Yes.
It's an invisibility that, because I grew up in D.C., which at the time was Chocolate City, I did not understand context, like how do I move to this environment? It taught me some other things. Can you talk a bit about kind of getting to Spelman and having this experience of this new, I guess, array of Black people almost?
Right.
Well, what is that like?
It was a culture shock. So when I got to Spelman, we had this freshman week, and I went because I had gone to an arts high school where I was tired of just the white supremacist experiences I was having. And so I was really hungry for connecting with other women-identified Black people.
I want to take a little beat. I want to take a little beat of a pause, and I want to ask a different question. And I think it's a question that many think about and don't often ask. What's the difference in white feminism and Black feminism?
Oh.
One came first and one is a reaction. So most people would think that white feminism came first and that Black feminism is a reaction. And I understand why people would think that, because our history is hidden and most people don't read. But in actuality, Black feminism is the source. And I also want to acknowledge what's challenging about that is there are people who I'm very clear are part of the Black feminist lineage who existed outside of that language. And most Black feminists, myself included, claim them because it's not about the label, it's about the ideology and the work. So I put that caveat that as far as who was identifying as Black feminism, that is something that I would say is 20th century, but in the lineage, it goes back in the 1700s, of who are the Black women who held space for the radical idea that I'm experiencing racism in these gender-specific ways. Phyllis Wheatley was doing that. You know what I mean? Harriet Tubman, all these women. Who was the woman in Missouri who was accused of killing her children, was on trial? Mm-hmm. Who's the woman who sued for the freedom of her and her children? Those are women who exist in this lineage of really holding this line of we are having these experiences and we see that our womb is being used to populate this entire fucking empire. And I want you to know I ain't fucking with that. So I would say that we came first in terms of the lineage, the experience. And I know that white feminists know that shit because they always get defensive. the only people who they can name are those who were fighting for themselves. As do the people who I can name in my lineage are folks who were fighting for us.
Okay.
And so I feel like that also makes a difference.
Very
now,
well said,
thank you. Now, I think about this a lot. Like, I just want you to know, like, so you kind of asked me the perfect and probably the wrong question for your time issue.
No. We got plenty of battery life.
Okay. And we have plugs if needed. But something else is there's like different types of Black feminisms, right? So I also think that it's important to hold space. Like, people are always, oh, I don't agree with Black feminism, it's this. And I'm always like, okay, I hear you. What are you talking about? Because I'm not like it either. But folks can never, because like it's an art form. It's a form of photography. It exists in film. Definitely in visual art, lectures, writings, poetry. It is a range. But people often have this very, very limited idea that often isn't based in their own experiences or research. It's often what they read, someone else read, that someone else interpreted. But people often have this very small sort of limitation of Black feminism and then use that to make a critique of an entire genre. And I say that because Black feminists don't always agree. Like there are liberal Black feminists, right? Who, you have, I think I'm a radical Black feminist in a way that some people get uncomfortable. If I'm being honest, I'm not a revolutionary Black feminist, though I aspire to, and at times I'm aligned with the revolutionary ones. Mm-hmm. So, it's a spectrum. So I think that is the ultimate difference. But or put differently, I would say, are you trying to replicate existing power dynamics? Because oftentimes what I would call mainstream feminism, like a white feminism, is actually just interested in becoming the white man. So I don't want to actually
need that.
I mean, white men don't want to be white men, and they shouldn't, because who wants to have an identity based on rape and murder, or the defense of those things? So I think a question we have to ask ourselves is is this activism, is this advocacy only to change my position in the hierarchy, or is it to get rid of hierarchy altogether?
So I guess the oversimplification, and you can say you just oversimplified it, but it seems like the oversimplification of what you've said is that, in your opinion, the difference is white feminism is about the individual and Black feminism is about the people or the culture.
I would say that. I would just add a lot of nuances and this and this and that. But yeah, I would say that. But of course, I also think I'm a Black feminist for two reasons. I'm a feminist and I'm Black, but I also exist in a lineage of Black feminism as a particular framework, as a particular praxis. And I think that there are people who can be Black, who can have a Black feminist praxis or have a framework that's not, is that the male? Yeah. That's not people who are Black. So at CHOP, I'm always talking about, not too much, talking about how can we do our work through a Black feminist lens, knowing that my staff is multiracial, because I don't think it's a requirement to be Black and woman or Black and femme in order to do your work through a particular lens. We do a lot of bill drafting on behalf of state coalitions. A Black feminist lens means, how do I ensure that when I'm drafting this proposed bill or policy, I'm thinking of the most amount of people who will be positively impacted by it.
So it goes, as I said earlier, that if I think about it from a white feminist framework, it's about the individual and an individual's movement, versus what you're saying, which is again another piece of this, is about a community's movement, or how many more people does something react to or impact, right? So let's get to that. Okay. Now, that you have met Wendi. Wendi is head over tea kettles.
Absolutely.
No. I already seen Wendy's head over tea kettles. You still on your bullshit a little bit.
I thought you were gonna say head over heels in love.
No,
Like,
I said head over tea kettle.
Yes, it was not.
I
love.
said what I said. You still on your bullshit, so she got to play it cool, right?
Yeah, I was,
Right.
and I wasn't.
Were you playing it cool, babe?
No.
So how long before there's a meeting of the minds of?
Well, it started with you in pursuit of me, and we also didn't know the age difference.
No, right.
So when we met, I thought I was 23, and when we met, I thought you were 27, and you thought I was 27. So once it was like, oh, you're a lot younger, and you were like 33 or 34,
years,
11-year age difference.
Okay.
So you were 34. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I realized, oh, she's a serious party girl. I can't hang.
Right.
You know, I'm still recuperating from trying to keep up with her like 15 years ago.
Right.
So I was, yeah.
So you
It
get
took about 9 months.
9 months, all right, and you do what?
well, at some point, I would say early. So June is when we met. We started going on dates in August. Then by early September, we were like, no, because the AIDS thing, and we want, different things.
No.
And I feel
Not
like-
I was like, I'm clearly attracted to you. You're not attracted to me in the same way. So I'm cool. I would actually rather be your friend, because I don't think all attraction is for pursuit.
And
We've
then-
gotten to know each other well enough to see that's not actually
Right.
the move here.
And then mid-September, I went to Oakland.
Yeah.
And the flaw in the plan was we still hung out
I didn't think that was
a lot. Well, in hindsight,
That's like every bad lesbian video.
Yeah.
yeah, basically
Actually,
we're like,
we
we're
are-
not
yeah.
going to do this.
But I
we still
really
hung out.
meant what I said. I really meant it. I was like, cool. We are friends. But you didn't get the memo.
Well, because
Who you
we
got
were
jealous?
still.
No.
It's not that I got jealous. It's that we were still hanging out. So I was forming a bond. I was
like, yeah,
becoming
because we're friends.
And in hindsight, I realized that I needed the pressure of not dating in order to like build the connection.
I just thought you were crazy. When you
You're
said,
not wrong.
Well, because we decided we weren't gonna date, which was the best rejection
It
ever.
really was. We had
It was
a great,
wonderful time.
great lunch. Went to the river.
We went to the river.
great.
We got
The river's still one of our favorite places.
More walls, and then you went to California, and we continued to talk. I continued to be like, oh, she doesn't know how to spell.
She didn't understand texting.
I didn't know.
She didn't
text.
understand text abbreviation.
Okay.
Right, and I was just like, no, nice. I'll enjoy getting to know you, in this other context. And as soon as we said that, you turned around and were
Yeah,
like,
after CR10.
actually, I have
and
a
then
crush
went
on
to-
you.
To Wands, remember?
And I was like, flattered,
Yeah.
but no.
Because you still out in them streets.
I don't think that's what.
Yeah, well, for me, I knew my heart would get too beat up. And I was already heartbroken.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, I'm not grown up enough for this. And so we had a great, so it actually meant we ended up getting to know each other better. So Dion hosted a Black lesbian gathering.
I really wish she had done more. It was a great ass
It was
conference.
great. And so what had happened, there must have been a Saturday night thing. there was a party.
It's a pajama party because you know it's Dion.
Yeah, and
You
it
know
was
how she
hot.
vote.
It was fantastic. I had a great time, but I also saw you generating quite a bit of interest. And I was like, you know what?
It was very
I'm having a
one-sided.
good time now, but in a minute, I'm not going to be having a good time. So I'm going to leave Mandisa to enjoy herself. And I went home. When I went home, Mandisa called me up. And next thing I know, she invited herself over. And I was like, you know what? If you're interested in cuddling, you can come over. And it was one of the sweetest nights I had had in a really long time.
And I just want to clarify, it was definitely one-sided interest.
What? One-sided interest? What?
Like in terms of, she was like, I was generating interest. I was not, because I was very clear. I mean, I didn't necessarily know like I was going to like, you know, go home with you, but I was excited to see you. So I wasn't like entertained like the folks who were hitting on me or whatever.
And I didn't understand that.
And I understand how seeing it, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, and it
You know,
wasn't
if someone's
until-
hitting on me or buying me a drink, and I accept it, because, you know,
Why not?
Right. Drinks are free. Free drink is a free drink.
It doesn't mean, like, I could see how for you, like, you're not seeing that
How you
I'm,
feel.
exactly. You know, you're
Right.
saying, oh, she done accepted a drink,
Right.
you know.
But I was
so-
like, okay, that's cool. And I was so flattered when you came up, when you asked to come over, and I was also, you really touched my heart when you asked what I would like, and I said it, and you met it. And I was impressed by that. And so, especially having understood how eager you had been, and it just really, and then the next day we showed up, and I didn't want anybody to know that we were connecting in that way.
So I dropped
so-
her off first and went home and put on new clothes.
Because you didn't want to do the walk of shame.
That's right.
Because she didn't want to. I had no
'Cause I
problem.
did.
I didn't give a fuck.
That's
I had
right.
no problem
I
going
was-
back in
I
the
was-
same clothes you saw me in.
I didn't want anybody
But
to
when
know
he
my
was like,
business
could you
as
take
far
me
as I
there
was
first?
concerned. I was like, I am a professional lesbian, but
Right.
ain't nobody gonna see me.
So now you guys are together, and that's
I invited her over
Oh my
to my
God.
house for okra stew and macaroni and cheese.
And we finally had sex.
wow.
Because this entire time, there was...
You hadn't done it in all this.
No, I
Wow.
wasn't interested.
Wow.
We had a very formal courtship at that
Yeah.
point.
Wow.
We started dating.
Do you think you could court somebody in 2024 for what is that, 9
Absolutely,
months?
if you want to. Absolutely. You can court somebody longer.
I hope not. So this is one of those things that
That's
I'm,
what people
Well,
say,
some people's courting includes sex, so
Right.
we can all define.
but not mine.
differently.
right.
Not at that time.
Yeah.
So, all right, 15 years together, right? Do I have the number right? 15, 13 or 15?
15.
Yeah, 15, right? Okay.
This month makes 10 years of marriage,
Right.
September 20th.
Okay. So you're married for 10 years. Now I want to break this up into, because we're going to start to,
And we're both like anti-marriage, by the way.
okay, that's what I want to get to. So, but I want to get to two other pieces. Now, here we are, it's 2024. What do you do professionally? What do you do professionally?
You want to start?
Well, I am on a sabbatical. I ran an organization with my friend Aisha Rashid, an organization called Southerners on New Ground. We affectionately refer to it as SONG, for about almost 4 years during the pandemic. And it just ran my system ragged. And so when I started thinking about what I would do next, Mandisa reflected back to me that she thought it made sense for me to really make it my job to do whatever I need to do to nurture my life force. So tending to my body. Yeah. So that's what I do.
Okay.
And my second job is as a trophy wife.
You're really, really good at that, too. I mean, I was so inspired by Wendi a song that I decided I too will be a director of a nonprofit. So since
But she
October,
does it so well.
Wendi, that implies that you didn't do it well. Since October 2022, I've been the ED of the Center for HIV Law and Policy, also known as CHOP, not CHOPE, as some people like to call it. We are a national organization. I love being based here. People think I moved because our founder and former ED was from New York. And I think that we think of national leadership as in New York or DC. And as a Southerner, a generations long Southerner, it's important that I, not move from our home. So we do work that I say is at the intersection of the criminal legal system and the public health system. And our sort of mantra is moving the carceral system outside of the public health system. So when we currently respond to carceral, to a public health epidemics, with incarceration, we're like, no. There are other ways of doing that. So we do a lot of bill drafting, policy reforms, advocacy, research, and support of that at both the state and federal level. So I'm the ED. It's wild. I can't believe it. But most of the time, I'm really happy. I love the folks I work with. I will fight to protect the folks that I work with. I enjoy the work that I do most of the time.
So you talked about undergrad, but when did you decide to go to law school, and how did you go to law school?
I think because of my class background, because I was always an outspoken Black girl, and because I was always intelligent, it was always like, oh, you just talk back to me, you're going to be a lawyer. Or, you argue back to me because, children from a Christianity, you're seen, you're not heard. Black children, Black girl children, if you're told something, you do it. And I'd be like, well, why? Because it seems to me that this makes more sense than that. And a 9-year-old, doing that. And I didn't just do it with my parents. I did it with the outside world, because in the world that I lived in, being a kid, it wasn't a reason why I had to absolutely do what you said. Right. To me, things still had to make sense. And so I think it was a mixture of being told so many times, oh, yeah, you're going to be a lawyer. And it was never a compliment. It was never like, we encourage
you to go to graduate school,
it's
and learn the law.
What else are people going to do with you? This combative, It was also very racialized. It was a fat Black girl child, dark skinned, where it was you have to have some kind of value because your body and your tone ain't really doing it. But this can, also add value. But nonetheless, after a while, I was like, oh yeah, this lawyer, it can be a champion for change. So initially, I actually wanted to be a anti-domestic violence advocate and defend, Lifetime movies started when I was a kid. So that's a lot of the first movies on Lifetime were
Sarah T, teenage alcoholic.
right. And so that, is what I thought. Then went to undergraduate, started connecting with these Black feminists, doing this work. I learned about state violence and got involved.
Dionne Haywood.
Dionne Haywood was definitely one of the
Shana
women
Griffin.
who I looked up to. Shana Griffin, so many folks, Andrea Ritchie, Alicia Bieria, Janelle White. And so I was like, oh, okay, this can be a tool. Lawyering can be a tool that is one of many tools for organizing and change. And yeah.
So one of the things that this whole idea of Bulldagger Chronicles stemmed from was really my work in predominantly white spaces. And that really needing and wanting a space for me and people like me, particularly those who are masculine center. But one of the big comments we've gotten a lot is wanting to hear about more couples with longevity. And I think sometimes because the narrative on whether it's men or women to some extent, is that these relationships are not sustainable. that they are not sustained. And so one of my questions for you is, what advice do you have for...
Pull Uncle Walter.
Huh?
Oh no, babe.
But
Let her ask her question. Sorry.
what advice do you have for people about going into relationships? I mean, I don't know that everybody's going to wait 9 months to get some, but is that, do you think that helped to build a foundation that was the sustainability of this?
I would say it challenged me.
Challenged you how?
It challenged me. So, like you always hear these things, you have so much more to offer than your body, or you hear those things. But, as someone who didn't have tons of experience with sex, but Wendi was definitely like my first sexual partner. So
she was your first sex?
No, I said definitely was not.
Okay.
I'm trying to make a pendulum. She wasn't my first, but I didn't have like tons.
Right.
It was something that I just always kind of thought would happen early on. And so this was the first time where I was like, what are the other things that I want to grow, since I really like this person and she's communicated that sex right now is not on the table. So it challenged me in the best possible way, honestly, to think about like the other things that I wanted to do, because, before it'd be like, I've always, like I said, reading. I've always liked books. So like, a professor's going to be at 2 and, oh, let's go. But somehow sex would be a part of it, like maybe before or after. So it was a good challenge to think, oh, I still want to go like to this lecture. But in addition, what can we do? Oh, we'll go to this cafe instead, or we'll go to the park, or we'll do all these other things where in the past I would have somehow had sex in there. I always held out hope, and I'm glad I did, because finally, but, for me, now I'm very clear. That's what I did. I'm not trying to make a formula of how to get to 15 plus years, because I know many couples who abstained and were together for a month. And I know many couples who fucked the first hour and been together 20, you know what I mean? So I think, it's all kind of ways of doing it.
Right. And when you say doing it, you mean the couple thing, not the sex thing.
Right. Yeah. You're like, although we believe in fucking, that's what we do.
Wendi has this joke. She's like, yeah, if we were straight, we would have a lot of children and a lot of babies. And it's very true.
So I want to really and truly thank you. I want to thank you for taking time and inviting us into your home, because people can't see it, but there are other people behind the scenes, because you guys know I don't really, I have ideas. I don't really implement too much. So I do want to truly thank you. For me, I think, Mandisa, you and I met through work, but I think watching you from afar, you're a force. And, for me, it's like, as people evolve and grow, myself included, you need new people in your, I think it's that watering that you were just talking about. And I think so often, particularly, I think people that may not do work in the HIV space in particular don't understand sometimes how challenging it can be, how competitive it can be, how I always say HIV work is not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart for so many reasons, but one being so many people come already so broken to the work, and they don't always know how to do their own work of repair. And I think I've been in that space myself, but trying to do the work and walk a different path today. And you've been, I think, a very good example for many of us of how to still lead with authority, lead with your heart, lead with intention, but most importantly, to lead with integrity. And so I just really want to say that to you, and to thank you for the work that you do. I think I've watched you take this organization to a new place, and so I value that. And I think as a person who is, not in a relationship, but, I think that you give us all a little hope, but also I know you say you don't want to give advice, but I think you do give us a roadmap. You do give us a roadmap. So again, thank you. And boys and girls, we'll be doing more of these. But again, I'd like to thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.